Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Hey, do I have a topic for you today? I think just about all of us, certainly any of us who have been in a relationship with a woman before, have experienced that moment where she gets really upset. And if we tell her, hey, why don't you calm down? It's just like shaking a warm Diet Coke and uncorking it. It's going to explode everywhere. How can we find ourselves in disagreements with a woman or a situation where maybe she's, well, we don't want to use the word hysterical because that'll make her hysterical if we call her that. But what if we find ourselves in a similar situation to that and really don't know how to get out of it? And it's almost as if we have 5 seconds to figure out the right thing to say or do right now, or maybe the relationship's over. Well, my returning guest, Doug Knoll, is a master of de-escalation. And he has a book called De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. And 90 seconds might be a little too long, but it's how long we're going to give ourselves today to unravel a bird's nest like that. Certainly something every man should have in his toolkit, and I'm excited to have Doug Knoll on. Before we introduce him to you, I want to remind you that the website is mountaintoppodcast.com. The Facebook group for all you guys is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook, which is where all you guys should be hanging out. It's a lot of fun. And of course, on social media, just about everywhere, it's at Scot McKay. I also want to remind you guys, if you're not watching this podcast, if you're still listening, you're missing out on some really fun nuances when I have guests on. So you want to go to YouTube and check out the video version. Without anything further, Doug Knoll from Central California. Welcome back, Doug. It's great to have you on.
Hey, Scott, it's great to be here. And before we get started, hey, for everybody who's listening, do me a favor. Whatever platform you're on right now, give Scott a 5-star review right now. His podcast is fantastic. It requires support, and you're the people who support it. 5-star review. Don't screw around. Do it right now while you're listening.
I know why I've had you on 3 times, and that's a big part of it. Actually, that was completely unexpected, and I do definitely appreciate that. And I echo that. I don't go around begging for 5 stars and, smash that like button. I'm not that kind of guy. And, I don't have 3,000 reviews because I'm not going around harping on it. But
you shouldn't have to. People should just give you 5-star reviews. You have an amazing podcast.
Oh, I agree.
You've been doing this for a long time. Come on, people, get real.
It's funny. I have that many listeners. I just don't have that many reviews. It's amazing.
Right.
You are a long-time expert in this. And I think the first thing I want to ask you is, how does this play out in your own relationships? I mean,
Perfectly. My wife and I never fight or argue. We might have disagreements, but we don't fight about it. And if either one of us gets upset, the other one knows exactly what to do. And just settle back, listen to the emotions, and reflect back what the other person's feeling so that we feel deeply heard and validated.
Okay, what if there's more than 90 seconds worth of emotions that need to be heard?
You hang with it until the other person's calmed down. Rarely more than a couple of minutes.
So the 90-second clock kind of starts ticking when it's time to de-escalate, not when the problem starts. Is that accurate?
Yeah. The 90-second clock starts when you start actually listening to and reflecting the feelings of the woman, not anything else.
I think we've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe from you, maybe from others. It seems like a very common strategy for de-escalation, especially, or even I should say, above and beyond relationships in, say, law enforcement, right? It's a general psychological principle.
The technical term is called affect, AFFECT, labeling. It's grounded in a seminal neuroscience study that came out in 2007 out of UCLA. And what that study showed was when you label the emotional experience of somebody who's upset, it downshifts the emotional centers of the brain related to negative emotion, downshifts them down, and at the same time activates executive function in the prefrontal cortex so people can start to think again. So you're literally calming the brain down by simply telling somebody what they're feeling with the very specific emotions. And it's not as common as you might think. There are very few people who teach this. I know I am. I don't really know of anybody else that teaches this specifically the way I do. I know that Chris Voss talks a little bit about it in his book, but he's into negotiation, not into de-escalation. And
yeah, Chris Voss, it seems like he's a guy who has a hammer in his toolkit and everything looks like a nail. Everything starts looking like hostage negotiation.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard someone else say basically everything is hostage negotiation, but I think they were more of a comedian than a serious, psychosocial commentator. Yeah.
The beauty about this is it's not a difficult skill. It's a weird skill in the beginning. It's weird to learn because we're not used to talking about emotions. But once you overcome that weirdness, it is the most powerful relationship tool you can have. Because here's the thing. When we get into an argument, what are arguments all about? They're never about the substance. They're always about not being heard. And the paradox of a couple's argument is that I want you to hear me, so I'm going to yell at you until you listen to me. And the other person's brain is saying, I want you to hear me, so I'm going to yell at you until you hear me. And so you're yelling at each other, each wanting to be heard, and nobody's taking the time to say, stop, let me listen to you and validate what you're feeling.
That is so rare that I'm going to go out on a limb here. And this may be anecdotal, but I hear story after story of people having gone to therapy,
Correct.
Couples going into therapy, and they don't feel heard by the therapist.
That's right.
They're saying, okay, here's the deal. Here's what's going on.
That's
and the therapist goes, yeah, it seems like I still want to fit you or square a peg into this round hole because that's what I know how to talk about. I don't know anything about how to figure out what you're talking about. So let's reframe everything you're saying as if it's something else. I've also heard this, that, I don't know, for the sake of billable hours or not losing a customer or something like that, the counselor will say, how are you doing? How has it been going since last time? And the person will respond with, oh man, everything's coming up roses. I'm going great. I feel like I'm almost completely healed. My past, I don't even think about it anymore. And the person will go, oh, well, what's really hard? What's still broken? I think we need to get past this brokenness. I think there's still a lot in there that's unresolved. And the person will be like, no, I think a lot of it has been resolved. I feel great. I feel like in many ways we've accomplished what we've done here. All right, so come back next week and we'll talk about what's still broken and what's still a problem. I mean, even professionals in the mental health profession don't get what you're talking about.
No, they're not trained. They're not trained in neuroscience.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. There's a massive schism going on. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm a lay, I guess you could call me a lay student of neuroscience. But as I've studied this stuff, I've realized there's a massive schism between psychiatry, psychology, and neuroscience. And the neuroscience people are saying, you people are all screwed up. You don't know what you're talking about. Look at how the brain actually functions.
I'm laughing because I think a lot of the guys in the audience are like, well, I'm a scientific student of getting laid. So
well,
I guess we have something in common.
So understand how the brain actually functions. And it doesn't function the way we think it does. It functions completely differently.
That's so ironic a statement. Our brain doesn't function the way we think it does.
Correct.
When our brain's the one doing the thinking.
Correct.
Go ahead.
And the reason for that is that what we experience as reality is subjective. And the brain is processing millions of bits of data every single day. And the way I like to analogize is imagine Hoover Dam, this gigantic dam, and this massive reservoir, Lake Mead behind the dam. And then imagine a tiny little hole in the dam that's thinner than a needle, squirting out a stream of water. That stream of water is what we subjectively experience as reality. And behind the dam is everything else.
Based on our socialization, based on our frame of reference, our purview, where we're located, what we've experienced, how we were raised. It's a big world out there, and we wouldn't want to mow it, but we haven't seen most of it either, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's all behind us. And so many ways, all my work is grounded in neuroscience. If I don't have an empirical brain scanning study to support what I'm teaching, then I don't teach it. That's all I want to say about that. So, but
you just let everybody else do the studies and then you comment on it.
That's exactly right. I let the brain scientists do the brain work, and then I read their studies and say, how can I apply this to what I'm doing?
We do the fun part around here, right?
We do the fun part. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, affect labeling is one of those foundational skills that was studied with the brain scanning studies in 2007. And since then, there have been a number of studies since then. And so now we have this neuroscientifically based way that if you're a guy and you've got an angry girlfriend or an angry wife or an angry woman of any type, or it's reversed, a woman dealing with an angry man, you can literally calm them down in 1.5 to 2 minutes if you just use this simple skill. Also,
let's dive in. Let's talk about the practical parts.
Okay, well, I also want to say, just to lead in, if you want to build instant loyalty, trust, and safety, you listen to the emotions, not the words. And I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I've come to the conclusion that women want emotional safety more than anything else. More than sex, more than money, more than dealing with a handsome guy. They want to feel emotionally safe. And
I would not only agree with that, I would build upon that by saying I think that's the cornerstone work of masculinity.
That's right.
And igniting femininity is to make women feel emotionally safe.
And the way you do that is what I'm about to show you how to do. This is the foundational skill. All right. So first of all, mindset. There's no such thing as rationality. Neither men nor women are rational beings. That's a big myth. It's a big lie. Forget rationality. When you see somebody who's upset, whether it's a man or a woman, don't say they're being irrational. They're just being emotional. They're being normal. Emotions are normal. They're not abnormal. We've been taught that they're abnormal, they're evil, they make us weak, they're sinful. All bullshit. Emotions are what make us human. And it's not just feminine, it's also masculine. So we just got to get over that mindset that rationality is how we judge behavior and decision-making. There's no such thing as rationality. I could go into a long lecture on that, but I won't. So,
well, I would prefer a short lecture on that.
Okay, really quickly.
Okay.
Plato started the whole thing back 2,500 years ago, and it kind of came down over the years because all these philosophers and theologians could observe is that bad things happened when people were emotional. So they immediately came to the conclusion that emotion is bad, rationality is good. And so it's all about you should be rational, even though there's no such thing as rationality. Well, in the 1940s, two guys, John von Neumann and Oscar Morgenstern, developed rational choice theory. And they sort of took in economics, they took the concept that human beings make rational choices to maximize utility. In other words, they're making choices to make their lives better. Within 3 months of them publishing rational choice theory, they found that it didn't work. And rational choice theory was a great economic model, but a totally wrong description of actual human behavior. And what has been discovered in all the years since the 1940s is that all decision-making is emotional and all behavior is emotional. There is no such thing as rationality. So when you're a guy and you've been schooled in this idea that we're rational beings, it's going to lead you down the wrong track in terms of relationship because you can expect a relationship to be rational. It's not. It never has been. It never will be. Drop the idea of rationality.
So these guys have been confronted, as it were, with the idea of stoicism out there in the manosphere.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So stoicism has never said, don't be emotional. It's a complete misconception of what stoicism is as a philosophy. Stoicism says be aware of your emotions, regulate your emotions, and be emotionally intelligent. That's what stoicism is really all about. Instead, it got perverted into this idea that I can't ever let them see me sweat. I can never be upset. I can never cry. I can only be angry. That's the only true male emotion that is legitimate because it shows me to be tough and virile and mean and, all that stuff. Total bullshit.
Now, you also talked about nobody and nothing is rational. What about if you're in a situation where someone is either schizophrenic or having a bipolar episode and they really are being irrational off the charts? I can't coach to that. I can't tell guys how to handle that because those people aren't in our reality with us. So I'm sure that you've got kind of a sidecar to go along with this for handling people like that.
When we're dealing with personality disorders, such as schizophrenia or a manic depressive disorder or any of the other DSM problems, DSM being the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, which describes all these brain disorders.
Which always seems to be a work in progress, by the way.
Yeah, and that's another story. That's another story all into itself, driven by the insurance world, by the way. From my perspective, working in places like violent maximum security prisons, where I've trained inmates how to de-escalate prison violence, as long as people have functioning emotions, affect labeling works. And it turns out emotions are the last thing to go. So it works with people who have dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these debilitating diseases. People still respond to emotional validation. Every human brain is hardwired for this, including a woman's brain. So let's get to it. How do you do this? The first thing you do, let's say a woman is really upset, either upset at a situation that you're not involved in, or worse, maybe upset at you. The first thing you have to do is you have to learn how to not listen to the words. Ignore what she's saying. Because if you listen to what she says, you're going to get triggered, and then you're in it, and it's really hard to get out. So train yourself to not listen to the words. It's not that hard. You just got to learn. Ignore the words. I don't care what she's saying. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to listen for the emotions. And our brains are hardwired for doing this. It goes back millions of years of evolution, long before we were able to speak. Vocabulary. Humans have only been able to talk for less than 50,000 years. There was no vocabulary. There was no speaking.
I know a few women who can talk for at least 50,000 years.
But from an evolutionary perspective, language is very, very new. And before that, how did we communicate? It was all nonverbal. So, and we picked up on emotional cues. And we've been able to do this for millions of years. We still have that ability. We just don't use it. But now all you have to do is quiet your head, quiet down, don't get reactive, and just sit there in silence. Empty your head, and the emotions will start floating in. And then the third step is simply tell the woman what she is feeling in that moment. You are really pissed off. You're frustrated. You don't feel like you're being listened to. You feel ignored. You don't feel supported and appreciated. And you're really anxious and worried and concerned. And you feel really sad and disconnected and unhappy. And stop.
You know what's funny is a lot of times you'll hear from people, advice for going on job interviews or how to have conversation on first dates. And it's almost a running joke at this point that the best way for someone to feel heard is you repeat to them back, you mirror to them what they just said. Like, so where were you born? Where were you raised? Well, I was born at a very young age and I came from Poughkeepsie, New York. Oh, so you came from Poughkeepsie, New York. And the person, it was like a yes and,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm big on the yes and, the first rule of improv, because I think that helps build conversations.
Right.
What I find particularly evolutionary about what you're talking about is you're using that same principle, but you're applying it to the emotions they're feeling. And you're eating your own dog food here, as they used to say at Cisco Systems, when they use their own components in their own network. And hearing the emotions and mirroring and echoing the emotions, maybe not mirroring them, reflecting the emotions, right? Exactly. Not the words.
Correct.
So you are truly ignoring the words. And to me,
Correct.
The idea of ignoring the words completely is a hot take. Because how am I supposed to understand what it is she's feeling the emotions about if there's no verbal context?
You don't need it.
I'm sure you have an answer. You
don't
need
need it. Your brain knows what she's feeling. And all you got to do is pay attention. Now, it helps when I coach people and teaching people how to do this. I teach them how to structure them. Emotions are data, like numbers on a spreadsheet. And the problem is we've never been trained how to structure emotions in a way that makes sense to us. So the metaphor I like to use is imagine you got receipts and checks and invoices and bank statements, and it's all a big pile on your desk. And now you've got to tell me what the condition of the company is, because it's not in and they're not in formal financial statements. That's the difference. We take this big pile of messy stuff and we structure it so that we can have access to it. That's the big trick. And that's what I teach.
Anybody who's ever been to a country, anybody who's done even a modicum of world travel to any country where they don't speak of the language, you still can connect with people. You still know where people are coming from. You still will know when someone's happy you came into their store. You know when someone's sick of you. You know when the police are angry.
Human beings are human beings. We all have the same we all have a shared base of emotions, but we also have emotions that are unique to our culture. There are emotions that exist in Finland that do not exist in North America. And
give me an example. I think that's fascinating.
There is I can't remember the word for it, but that when it's wintertime in Finland and people are all gathered close together in a room, they have an emotion for the feeling that generates. And there's no such word in English for that.
Huh, interesting. Kind of like a coziness.
Emotions are constructed, but we're not born with emotion. Emotions are socially constructed. And we really don't start forming emotions until about 18 months of age. Up until that time, we have something else called affect, AFF, and we are born with affect, and there are 9 of them. All human beings are born with these 9 affect. The affect are like colors on an artist's palette, and our brain takes these different colors, affect, and mix and match them in different intensities, and we have an experience, and we put a name on it based on our culture and our language. And that.
So do you think a lot of guys are just kind of painting by numbers and they're still in the affect world?
Yeah.
The evolution version that makes us smarter with women would be learning how to be more of an artiste.
That's exactly right. Develop emotional granularity. The more precise you can be about the emotions you're experiencing, the more precise you can be about the emotions that she's experiencing. And unfortunately, we live in a world where men are told that emotions are bad and evil. So they don't really spend the time to develop emotional granularity. They get into a condition called alexithymia, which is the inability to name your own emotions, which
we've talked about on this show before.
Which leads to lots of relationship problems. And so the cure for alexithymia is to learn how to label somebody else's emotions, because if I can label somebody else's emotions, it's building my emotional vocabulary and my emotional sensitivity, so that I can be emotionally self-aware and emotionally self-regulate myself. So there's a huge benefit to you from affect labeling or validating the emotions of your girlfriend. Huge benefit. Going back to that date, the advice that I give is don't talk about yourself. Listen to what she's feeling and simply reflect back the experiences as she's telling you. Reflect back her emotional experiences and watch what happens. And she'll go on all night long.
She really will.
Thrilled somebody's validating. And I want to give one other story too.
Well, before you do, understand, if you do that, you are a rare man in the world.
That's right.
It's like a second date guarantee if you want it.
Probably more than that.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to go back and tell you about ignoring the words. So my wife, who is the most amazing woman in the world, blew out her ACL skiing. I guess it's been 4 years now. And we got her, she skied down the hill and went to ski. That's how tough she is. But ultimately she had to have ACL replacement, which is, it's a surgery. She came home, first night after the surgery, she was fine. But the second day, the pain really hit her. And we had her on some pretty powerful painkillers. And she called me in a complete drug-induced haze and started screaming at me, telling me what an asshole I was and how I never did anything. And just really lit into me. It was hard. But I also knew that this was all drug-induced. And so I just sat there on the bed. She's in pain, screaming at me, blaming me for everything, accusing me of everything. And I sat there and I ignored the words, even though they were really hurtful. And I just simply affect labeled her. You're angry, you're frustrated, you're in pain, you're upset. And that went on for a good 15 minutes until she finally calmed down. And I got up and went out. It took me 2 months to recover from that. but that's how you do it. And that was amazing to me, was as hurtful as those words were. And I know she didn't really mean them, but still it was really hurtful to hear. I was able to stay there completely calm and composed and not get reactive and not get upset and be present for her in her moment and validate what she was going through. And that was more important to me than the fact that she was hurting me and I was taking a lot of psychic injury because of that. And that's the power of this stuff.
You hear a lot about that kind of scenario when women are giving birth.
Right.
Because of
very
the pain.
Painful. Mm-hmm.
I think the question that has to be asked here is, how do you know when someone doesn't mean the insults they're leveling upon you?
Most of the time, they don't mean it. And now I'm speaking in my role as a professional high conflict mediator, where I've walked into some really deep, hard conflict, whether I've been teaching in prisons, teaching murderers how to be peacemakers, or I'm working on the outside, I'm working in a high conflict corporate dispute or family business dispute, and people are screaming and yelling at each other. My experience has been that most of the time, they don't mean it. They're just hurt, and they're lashing out, and they want to be heard. And if you take the time to just listen and validate, the hurt goes away, the screaming dies down, and people relax and calm down. And the problem can be solved.
Well, the problem is sometimes people really have a hard time believing that, contrary to what you just said, that wasn't what was bottled up over all these years. And finally it was like, here it is, I'm sick of your face.
What's really coming up, in my opinion, what's really coming up is a huge reservoir of resentment that's developed over many, many years of relationship. And then finally it blows up. I have been guilty of it myself in my first marriage. And so I've been there, done that. All this resentment builds up, and now you just it explodes out. And it's really an expression of frustration, sadness, loss, grief, abandonment, rejection, and feeling unloved and unlovable over all these years. That's being expressed in a very typically aggressive, insulting way.
Do you think it's more difficult not only to handle these situations, but in fact be prepared for them if they come few and far between? If, like you said, you and your spouse, and Emily and I are similar in this respect,
Mm-hmm.
don't have a whole lot of knockdown dragouts around here. This is atypical for us. So when one happens, I would think because of the rarity of such a situation, we'd be more shocked by its occurrence than this is just every day. Yeah. And we would also perhaps not have the field sense to be able to handle it as adeptly as we would if we'd done this several times before. So that's kind of an irony about this, isn't it?
Well,
the less it happens, the more you have to be on point just to be ready and prepared for it.
But here's the thing. The more you affect label, the better you get at it. And the better
even
you
in
get,
the good times.
even in the good times, the better you get at it until it becomes an unconscious automatic response. And you don't even have to think about it. And people can come into you and just get right in your face and shout vile insults at you. And you're going to drop right in to your place, and you're going to start affect labeling and stay calm, and it just happens automatically. You don't even think about it.
Well, you bring up a good point here. I mean, we're focusing on our relationships with women because that's how we roll around here. That's how we get down. But really, the practice of what you're talking about translates to every other relationship, even micro relationships with people at the grocery store.
That's right. And that's a great place to practice, by the way.
across all aspects of our life.
That's right. Yeah. You learn that this becomes one of the foundational skills of life that allows you to transform any relationship instantly, because we all have a deep-seated need to be heard, and nobody knows how to listen. So that need never gets fulfilled until somebody walks along that's learned how to affect label and now can do that deep validation. And it's like, wow, thank you for listening to me. The gratitude is effusive. It's phenomenal how it works.
Well, even sometimes you'll listen to podcasts like this one, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it myself. We're so interested in being heard ourselves that we forget that other people have the same need we do.
That's right.
And I think that could be why this is a very rare skill.
That's right.
Because when someone comes at us with whatever negative or strong emotion they're bringing to the table, I think the first, perhaps admittedly untrained human response would be defense.
That's right.
Like, hey, wait a minute, buddy. Who do you think you're yelling at? You do this too. I know you are, but what am I, kind of thing.
That's right. We go into immediate threat response.
Right.
Because our brains cannot distinguish between a social threat and a physical threat. So we immediately go into defense unless we've been trained what I teach people in, which is how to affect label. And then we go into that response, which changes the dynamic completely. So let me, just so people can get a sense of this, let me give you some statements that you guys, everybody who's listening, you can use this right away. So let's imagine you've got a girlfriend or a spouse who is really pissed off either at you or just pissed off at something. First thing you're going to say, you're really pissed off and you feel like I really don't get it and I don't understand you. Get those words memorized. Another thing you can say is you feel really hurt and you don't feel like I'm really on your side right now. That's the second thing you can say. If she goes quiet or withdraws, you're shut down, you're disappointed, and you're wondering if I actually care for you. And if you screw up, you really screwed up, then you say you're feeling betrayed and you're really scared that this might happen again.
It takes a lot of wisdom and restraint and maturity to pull this off. I mean, it's so much easier to talk about it when the emotions aren't there than when it's happening.
More than anything, it takes courage.
It does. The weak guy is the one who reacts and tries to, I guess, outpower, especially his woman, and keep her under his thumb. That's where it turns abusive.
That's exactly right. The strong, emotionally intelligent man will use these kinds of statements, recognizing that it's not about me. And if it is about me and I screwed up, then all the more reason I've got to listen her into existence and then figure out how to make things as right as possible.
Well, at what point, if any, do the words matter? And here's why I'm asking this question. You just mentioned memorizing these phrases. So, okay, we're going to ignore the words she's saying and read her emotions like a cheap paperback. Okay, great. That's a cool skill. We're obviously going to keep our emotions in check and at an appropriate level. And I think you've implied that successfully. But in the example you just gave of I've done someone wrong and they feel betrayed, at some point we're going to need to apologize and own it, aren't we?
Correct. Well, that's an interesting question. What we're doing here is we're flipping the script. So what happens to a lot of guys is they've got an upset girlfriend or an upset woman, and they immediately get anxious about her upset. And to soothe their own anxiety, they jump in and try to problem solve. Look, if you would just do it this way, then, and that blows it up. Why? Because the woman doesn't feel heard or listened to. She's feeling invalidated. All you're trying to do is soothe your own anxiety over her upset. And you're telling her, if you would do this differently, you wouldn't be in this emotional condition and I wouldn't feel upset.
Well, that's not a yes and either.
It's a very selfish kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're doing is we're flipping the script. If I say, wow, you're really pissed off, you're frustrated and angry, and you feel like you've been completely disrespected and you feel like you've been betrayed and abandoned by me. She says, yes. And typically the tears will start. You wait until she's calm, and then you say, all right, what do we need to do to make things right? And that's all you do. You just ask a question. What do we need to do to fix this? What do we need to make things right? How do we solve this problem? Don't never, ever, ever offer an unsolicited apology. And even then, apologies are very tricky, and most people do not understand how to do apologies, so they screw it up. That's a whole lesson unto itself, is how to apologize. And
well, let's hear it. I got time, because you were the first person in the history of this show to say never, ever offer an unsolicited apology.
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. So a true apology is 100% vulnerability. It's like, I'll give you the metaphor, and then I think you'll get it. So two alpha wolves are fighting for dominance. The one wolf loses. It immediately rolls onto its back and bares its neck. And the alpha wolf that wins goes in and just plucks at the neck, doesn't even break the skin. What the loser did was show complete vulnerability and say, I am completely vulnerable. You can take my life if you want. My life is in your hands. And the alpha wolf, of course, will not do that. It shows respect and says, yes, I accept your submission, and I'm the boss. That's an apology. You have to roll over and bare your neck and say, My life is in your hands. Whatever you need to do or want to do, you can do it. I have no defense.
Well, it's kind of like what you're saying is, again, it's not about the words, it's about the actions.
Right.
So this is kind of continuing that philosophy forward.
You can say, I'm sorry, and not mean it.
Yeah, okay. I think that's pretty profound, actually.
And what you have to do is, if you say, I am sorry, you have to say it and demonstrate it and behave in a way that makes you completely vulnerable and open and defenseless.
Okay, so let me land the plane here for the guys who are used to hearing how we talk about this around here. I think it's enlightening to hear you say, okay, I'm a man who believes the emotions matter more than the words. And I have a through line throughout all my teaching that shows I'm consistent in that. And I really appreciate that. I think that's pretty badass. Yes, a lot of people go, look, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. In other words, it's just shut up, go away.
That's
is what
right.
they're really saying. I'm done. And that's a weaponization.
That's right.
And I would say a similar situation is, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. We're done.
Exactly.
Boy, is that an easy way to make someone shut up, but it doesn't do anything about the emotions. It doesn't quell the resentment at all.
That's correct. It only makes it worse.
My thought, that I was thinking the direction you were going to go in is it's about that part about making it right as much as just saying, hey, here's my feeling, believe it or not. In other words, you're going to put action behind those words. I mean, what can we do to make this right? A woman may say to the man in her life, well, you're the man, figure it out, which would frustrate the heck out of us. But at least, we put that ball in her court.
You affect label that.
Right. If you get it volleyed back into your court, well, I suppose you have to do something.
But you're really confused and unsure about how we can make things right. And you want me to think about it and offer suggestions to you that you can either accept or reject.
Okay.
That's how you respond to that.
That's what you'd have to do at that point.
And then you say, well, I don't know, what if we did this? What if I apologized?
What if I resolve not to do this anymore and I'm going to change this habit?
What if I really work hard on changing myself so that this never happens again? And if it does, it won't be as bad.
All right. So what if she asks a question, just to play devil's advocate here? What if she's really upset because she wants to buy 5 pairs of Bruno Magli shoes and you don't have the money for it?
Right.
You can affect label the hell out of that, but how do you make it right?
You're really frustrated that we don't have the money for you to go out and buy the shoes that you really, really, really want to buy. And you're frustrated because I'm saying, no, we can't do that. We can't afford that. And it's really upsetting to you because you feel rejected and you feel unloved and you even feel a little abandoned. She'll say, yes. So then I might say, so how important is it for you to, in 5 years, have a house that we own, that we can raise a family in?
That sounds a little passive aggressive.
No, it's not. I'm changing the frame. Do you want to buy the Bruno Magli shoes now and spend $10,000 on the credit card that will pay 2 years paying it off? Or do you want to be a little more frugal and buy a house together and raise a family?
And she says, I want the shoes.
Then you say, then that means no house.
Well, that's practical.
If that's your choice, I'm not going to get in the way of your choice, but just recognize the practical ramification is that means we won't have a house.
Well, what if that's demonstrably foolish in the long term? Where does masculine leadership come in?
Well, then the question then becomes, are you in the right relationship?
Wow, really?
Absolutely. If your values are so different from the girl's values, the woman's values, that you can't agree on basic stuff like priority over finances, then you're probably in the wrong relationship.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, man, that's going to be tough love for a lot of these guys.
Well, it is. I mean, and the problem is that she doesn't have financial discipline, expects somebody to be a sugar daddy, and you're a young guy in your 20s trying to make your way professionally or in your business or working or whatever you're doing. And you know that it's going to take fiscal discipline to get ahead in the world. And spending money frivolously just is not the way to get there.
I would think these are conversations you have to have when you're dating.
That's right. Down the road, as you get more and more serious, you have these conversations. This should not be a surprise conversation
That's exactly right.
That this should not happen and be a surprise. If it is, then you haven't done your due diligence. Your dating due diligence.
Exactly. Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation and an essential one for these guys.
Good.
And so many original concepts have been brought up and some shocking ones. And I really appreciate your candor in talking about them because, man, this really is a shock to a lot of guys' system and something we really need to think about differently. One thing I do want to address is, you were talking about alexithymia.
Alexithymia.
And a lot of guys have been led to believe, including by guests on the show, that that's kind of Asperger's adjacent. You got a problem if you're that guy, and you're bringing this idea that it could have been just socialized, and that
it's totally socialized.
Yeah,
there's nothing organic about this.
We've been taught it's been okay. In fact, it might even be good for us.
You're 3 years old. You're a little guy. You're out running around in the yard, and you fall down. You skin your knee, and you start to cry. What are you told?
Stop crying.
Stop crying. Rub dirt in it. It doesn't hurt. Be a man. Be a big boy. Pull up your pants.
Right. And then before you know it, you don't understand your own emotions anymore.
That's
why
right.
They're there. You just push them
And now
down.
all of a sudden you're alexithymic.
Wow. Isn't that something? Yeah. The name of your book, De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less, is really good stuff. And I'm going to put it back at the top of the Amazon influencer queue at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon for these guys. But I want you to also tell us before we go about your group on School. And if you guys aren't familiar with School, SKOOL.com.
So you've got a Facebook group, and there are other community groups. There are 2 or 3 or 4 platforms that allow for communities to come together. I don't like I just don't like Meta. I don't like Facebook. I don't like Zuckerberg. I don't like anything to do with it. I mean, I'm on it like everybody else. You have to be, but if I have a choice, I go somewhere else. So School just happens to be a pretty good platform for a community. And I decided about 4 months ago to build a School community for people who want to learn about everything I've talked about today, plus more, and be in a group that's very supportive. There are people I've trained in there, and people bring their problems in. We have a coffee hour every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. I get on Zoom and people can come in and ask me questions and we talk. And it's free to join, costs nothing to join, and you get out of it what you put into it. So you come in and you post and you reply and you get active and you get access to a lot of resources. And I just do this service. My life right now, frankly, I'm in a place where I'm pretty financially secure. I'm 75 years old. I still work. I still do stuff, but I get to do it because I get to serve people. And this whole School community is one way that I can serve a whole bunch of people where people don't have a lot of money. They can't pay me the big bucks I charge for coaching, but they can come in and I can still work with them. They can still learn and they can improve their lives and their relationships.
I think that sounds great. I've been impressed by everything I've seen from school.com. I think
it's a good platform.
Yeah, it's a good platform that fills a necessary gap. I think,
Right.
You can compare it to a Facebook group, but just by virtue of its nomenclature, School implies, this is where you come to learn.
It's a learning
something.
community. And it's got a lot of really cool, if you're a School owner like I am, I own my group, it's got a lot of features that are really useful. So anyways, for people who are interested, it's school.com, SKOOL.com/de-escalate, DE-escalate. That's it. Put in your email address, free to join, and you're good to go.
Just for good measure, because it's how we've always done things around here, and I'm stubborn. Mountaintoppodcast.com/Doug Knoll, your full name, DOUGNOLL, is also going to point to that very same School link, because that's what we always do. And a lot of these guys, they know that the URL is mountaintoppodcast.com. They just add your name to it, and boom, they're there.
Good to go.
Or school.com/DE
Right.
-escalate. Either way. Good stuff, man. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate this conversation. Every time you come on, it's not only rock solid information coming from a very smart perspective, but it also is life-changing. So thanks once again for coming on, Doug. Hope to have you back again when your next big thing comes along.
Okay, Scott. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And, you're one of the few podcast hosts where I get to be really blunt, because I'm dealing with an audience that needs to hear blunt stuff. And so it's really fun. So thank you.
The whole piss on your leg and tell you it's raining thing is terrible.
I know.
I appreciate you're from California and you're not like that.
No.
That I can appreciate.
I live in the real California, not in the fake California over on the coast.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful place just south of Yosemite, which is God's country.
I live in a beautiful place.
Oh, for sure. Well, thanks once again. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, As you've noticed, we're talking about better men getting better women. Someone kind of snarkily said to me, yeah, and better ingredients make better pizza. Exactly. I mean, I have no problem with that. If it works for Papa John, it works for us too. They do pizza, we do getting better with women. So if the shoe fits, if the Bruno Mali shoe fits, we'll pay $5,000 for it.
Absolutely.
Little comedic recall there. Now, we're grateful for you guys. And listen, we want to be crystal clear about what this is all about. Today's episode was all about getting better with women by being the better man, clearly. And there are so many nuances to that. There's so many ways to affect that. And going forward, we're going to have guests on who are laser targeted towards that in new and exciting ways. The dimensions we can get better with women in are practically infinite. So I appreciate you guys, and definitely go over to mountaintoppodcast.com. When you're there, check out Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, also the guys at the Keyport and the guys at Hero Soap. And when you partake of anything from any of our illustrious longtime sponsors, use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get an extra 10% off, and it'll appear right before your very eyes at checkout. And also fun and exciting stuff coming all the time. One of the latest features we have for you is called Vominos, which is AI that is walled off from the rest of the internet, only contains X and Y communications, research, and mindsets and answers. And when you ask it a question, it'll answer it the way I would. You can catch that at mountaintoppodcast.com as well. And until I talk to you again next time on Better Men Get Better Women, the Mountaintop Podcast, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.